I'm going to be talking about leveraging BusinessObjects and Tableau for maximum benefit. So to get started, why this coexistence? Why use BusinessObjects and Tableau together? So one of the things that we found is that more than 45% of companies that use BusinessObjects also use Tableau. And, just a year ago, I think that number was 40%. So we're seeing an increase year after year. More and more companies are starting to look into different visualization tools, including Tableau, Power BI, and this number is just growing every day. So both are obviously popular for self-service data discovery and for data visualization. But one of the things that our customers are finding is that Tableau may not always be the best solution for BI reporting. It can be used and it's great, but a lot of customers already have those strong investments in their BusinessObjects reports, hundreds, thousands of reports already written. They have established universes and so on and so forth. So what they want to do a lot of times is keep that Webby environment for their reporting needs and leverage those universes as well as the Webby reports for that validated data. So how does InfoBurst leverage BusinessObjects and Tableau together? So InfoBurst allows you to get your BusinessObjects content into Tableau. That way you can, again, like I said, leverage the versatility of all of your universes, all of your reports. We also help you to deliver and refresh your Tableau extracts. So you can schedule and, burst push BusinessObjects data into Tableau as a Tableau data extract, which is something we're going to see today. And when you're doing that, again, you also know you have that single version of truth. So for anybody who's attending this that was at IBIS last year, I think that was kind of a huge theme, was the single version of truth. But it's a phrase I really like because, it tells me that the data I'm looking at matches. In past lives, I've spent a lot of time manually checking to see, does this report match up to that report? And it's just very time consuming. And it's not something that, is a value add to an organization. So if you're using this one single data source, you're getting that single version of truth. You also can leverage your Webby calculated fields. So, rather than learning how to recreate a lot of your complex formulas in Tableau, you can actually use the formulas you've already created in Webby and bring those right into Tableau ahead of time. We do also offer event-based scheduling. So you can schedule your Tableau extract delivery using things like database triggers, ETL schedules, events, different things such as that. And then finally, with InfoBurst, you can also export your Tableau dashboard images and intelligently email that content as, say, a PDF or a PNG. And that's another thing that we're going to look at today during this session. So just really quickly going over kind of the high-level architecture. What you're seeing here is just the data sources. So, again, Web Intelligence. We just saw, Excel files as a data source in Webby, but we can also use those through InfoBurst. SQL queries from databases and, Tableau content as well, all filters into InfoBurst and then back out to Tableau, right? So we can deliver to the Tableau server. We can even deliver, hyperfiles that can be consumed in Tableau desktop. And we can also generate that content in various formats, such as PDF or email, PNG, and so on and so forth. And then finally, another really powerful feature of InfoBurst is this ability to merge different content into PDF. So we can take Webby content and Tableau content and split those apart into different pieces of content and then merge them back together intelligently and send that content out the door as, like I said, something that is optimized for mobile viewing or as a PDF or, even to a network share as a backup. We have a lot of different delivery options that are available as well. So, kind of how does all this work? Well, first of all, there is the hyper creation process. So during this process, we have the ability to take different data sources. Among them, and the ones that we're going to see today, there is the Webby report. So we can either bring in your report level content or your data provider content. And I will kind of show both and then only show one end result. Or you can even take just a simple database query and use that to create your hyper file. And then you also have some options through InfoBurst. So you can replace an existing one. So you can overwrite one that's already there if you just want to come in, say, every morning and have a fresh hyper file waiting for you with the most up-to-date data. You could schedule that, have it waiting first thing, or you can create a new one, and we give you that option within our tool. You can also set up an email notification so that as soon as that hyper file is delivered, somebody gets notified. That way they know, okay, look, I'm walking into the newest and greatest. And you can also select specific tabs or data providers in the Webby report, which is also something I'm going to show. So jumping over, let's see. That is not where I wanted to go. I have way too many things open. There we go. I like to start in the Webby report just to give everybody an idea of what we're working with today. And I like to keep the report very simple so that it should be easy to follow throughout this entire example. So here I have a Webby report with two different tabs. The first is just a simple summary tab with tables and sections by state. And it just has some cities down one side. And then I think this is product group across the top and a little bit of revenue. And I've highlighted the total revenue value, and that'll come into play a little later during one of my examples as to why. It also has a second tab called details. And this is where I took all of my objects, all my dimensions, all my measures, and just dumped them into one giant table. And I like to do it this way and point this out because you don't have to recreate the wheel to use InfoBurst. Simply adding a tab to those reports with your data in a table is all you need to do to generate this hyper file. You don't have to make a new report and recreate all those variables in a new report. So jumping over to InfoBurst, I have cataloged this document in InfoBurst, which basically means I made a connection to it from InfoBurst out through BusinessObjects. And you can see that when I select the document. Here's some of the details. Over here is the platform path, and it's showing that path in BusinessObjects as where this document sits, as well as some of the other document metadata from BusinessObjects, such as the document's ID and UID. You can also see, if it has any parameters, and it does have an optional one, the two tabs I just showed you in the report, and then any variables that are also existent in this report. And by variables, it's referring to any dimensions in the report. So now that we have that, we can then take that document and burst this as a hyper file. So again, there's a few different ways in here to do that. I can click this link and just say create burst, and it'll add the document to the burst for me and kind of give it a default name based on the document. But I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say burst to hyper. That way it's a little bit more descriptive for me and I know what I'm bursting. So as I said, it already added this report for me. So now I have the choice. I can either, feed the parameter if I choose to, but because it's optional, I'm going to just leave it blank for now. I can also filter this data, but because I'm creating a hyper, I want all the data. I don't want to filter what I'm seeing here. So I'm not going to add a filter at this time, but I am going to add my delivery. So again, for anyone familiar with InfoBurst, we have all these great delivery destinations available. Some of the most popular ones are network, folder, email. We do have our own portal where you can go to retrieve documents, SharePoint, and Tableau, and so on and so forth. So for this one, we're going to send it to Tableau server. And once I select that, any platforms that I have set up, any connections to Tableau server that are already in InfoBurst show up for me, and I can choose which site from this dropdown that I want to send it to. I can also drill into project level within Tableau server. And so you can see these projects here, and just flipping really quick over to Tableau server, you can see that here what I'm seeing here. So I have, if I go back up to the Explore level, here's all of my highest level projects. And then if I start drilling down into, I'm going to use customer demo, general demo today, it will take me through those levels. It's the same thing that I'm seeing here. Customer demo, general demo is where I was going to put this hyper file. I can then give this a file name, say data source Webby as the hyper file name. And then, again, I talked a little bit about these options. So I can choose to either replace the file in the destination if it's already there, or I can uncheck that if I wanted to create a new file each time. And then I can also add this email notification where I can click and add an email recipient and put a little message here that says, your file was received. And anywhere you see this little M, that's our macro builder. I could even, embed, let's say, the name of the file by bringing in our document name macro if I wanted to and say, this particular file has been delivered. Flipping over to the Format tab, you can see we default to Tableau Hyper because that's the newest, latest and greatest, and it's supported by Tableau 10.5 and above. So that's our default. We do still support TDE, but as Tableau phases that out, we will too. But, for now, it is there as an option. And then on the right, you have some of your lower level options. So it's going to ask you, is the first row headers, which it should be if you dumped everything onto a table. And this is also why that first tab is not an ideal tab to use for, this delivery, because it's looking for that first row of headers. And if you have something that's sectioned, it's going to read this just like it's displayed here, and it's going to have these sections and breaks within. So, the details table is the way to go here. So I can also say which tab to extract the data from. So I can come down here and I can check that details tab and uncheck the summary tab so that I know my data is coming from there. The other option here is data provider. So let's say, all the stuff that you need in your hyper is already in your query. You can just return the results of the data provider. You don't have to take the time to add it to a report tab or do any type of formatting. So for this example, I would want to leave it on report tab and extract those details. When I click save, it just does a quick little Tableau validation and it goes back to the main page of the burst. And that's it. It's that simple. Now I would click the run button, but in the nature of time, I did run this a little bit earlier just so that it would already be out here waiting to go. So here is our data source Webby that I just created. So I can flip right out to Tableau server. And I can click on that and I can say new workbook and start working with this data right away. And then I just wanted to show really quickly the mapping from Webby to Tableau. So, Infoverse is intelligent in its mapping as well. So it knows, if something's called state, that it's going to be a geographic type of dimension, from called product group is going to be a string type of dimension. And then it even maps the measures as well. So you can have your number of orders, number of products. And if you look back in here, you'll see these customer city, customer state, same measures. There it is, same dimensions here. Okay. Anna Laura, should I stop for questions in between or just keep going? And if they come in, you'll grab me. What would be easier here?
You can keep going, and if they come in, we'll grab you.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, so now we have our hyper. What are some of the things that we can do? So one of the things that we can do after we create our Tableau workbook is we can filter it and deliver it as, in various formats, PDF, Excel, PNG. Some of the requirements is it does have to be a Tableau workbook, not necessarily a published workbook for anyone who knows the difference. It's just the way that it's published out to Tableau server. And that's point two, it has to be on Tableau server. But once it's there, we can filter on any dimensions that exist in the data. And you can even choose which view or dashboard that you want to distribute. So I did put together, and I'll do this in a moment, an email where we're going to filter it and we're going to deliver this, or an example where we're going to filter it and we're going to deliver it out to email. So, whoops, that is not the right button. There we go. So going back into Infoverse to start this process, we're just going to create a new burst. And you can see also, I should say, I've already cataloged a dashboard here. And I did open it just so everybody can see what it looks like. It's a pretty simple dashboard. And this is the other piece I'll be working with today throughout this session. And on here, I have one just called Revenue Dashboard. It's got these 4 different views available. And I think it's refreshing real quickly. And then I also have one called Rev Dash Email. That's what I'm going to use in this example. And in this one, I actually set the size limit. And I did that intentionally because I don't want to embed a gigantic wide dashboard into an email as an image. It's going to look funny when the recipient gets it. They're going to be scrolling on their email and nobody wants to do that. So, I suggest kind of setting the size ahead of time so that you can control what it's going to look like when it reaches the end user. So coming back in again, I have this catalog here. You can also see that platform path just as it exists on Tableau server and so on and so forth. So very similar to working with a Webby document, similar type of situation when you're working with a Tableau document. So again, I can click to create this burst and it's automatically going to add the dashboard to my burst for me. And I can give it a name if I want to. The name is fine this time. I'll just leave it as it is. And now I'm going to apply one of those filters. So one of the things I have in here is a database connection, which is just basically a connection to our Microsoft SQL Server database. And in here, I have a query called state. If I run this query for you, you'll see it has a few columns. And I limited the amount of data just for time's sake as well. There are 4 different states in here with, abbreviation, a region, and then for this demo, an email address. Close out of that and go back to my burst. Now I'm going to add this filter. And again, I can filter on any dimension that exists in this Tableau workbook. So, I have all these different dimensions here. I even have one that's hidden just to show that it does show up. So I'm going to filter on, let's say, customer state, because that was one of the columns that I had available in that database connection. Now I'm going to say I want to use my data source, which is the database connection, and I'm going to choose that states query. And I just have to tell it which column to connect to. If I put in that column state name and add that filter, I can now leverage all of those other columns as well that are in that query, which is really cool. So, and what I mean by that, I'm going to show you in a second. When I go into my delivery and I change this and say I want to send this out by email, and I go in to add my recipient, I can click on this macro button. And because I connected this by state name, all the other columns that exist in that query are now available to me. So I'm going to, dynamically pull the email address down for each of those different states. I'm going to add that percentage email, which is our macro to call that column. I can also do the same thing for file name. I can say report for, and I can do a combination of text as well as macros. I'm going to say report for and just put the state abbreviation here. And then finally, under format, I can come in here and I can send this, like I said, as a PDF, CSV, Excel. In this case, I would like this to be the body of the email. So I'm going to send it out as a PNG, and I'm going to add it right into the body of the email. And I don't want all of my views. We do give that option. So I'm going to toggle that off, and I'm just going to choose the email view that I created and click save. And then finally, I might want to customize my email a little bit. So again, I come in here, and those macros again are available for email level as well, which is really cool. So I can, maybe put the state abbreviation in the subject line so the person knows what they're receiving immediately. I can add email address, or if you have custom ones, you can put your own, you can pull that in with the macro if it was in a column, and so on and so forth. And I can even add a message, which is optional in this case because I am embedding content right in the body of the email. So I'm going to leave it blank and just let the, what I'm sending speak for itself. And that's it. I hit save, and as soon as I hit the run button, this would come out and it'll produce these 4 emails, which again, I ran earlier just to save the time of sitting and watching something run. So maybe if I flip to the one for Nevada, and I can even open this in full screen, you can kind of see what it would look like as an email to somebody. And you can see I kind of control the content. And the reason I set it to this width is because this is what it would look like for someone that was consuming this on, say, a mobile device. You can kind of get the idea of what your content would look like for them. And this is really great because, I have an iPhone, and personally, when I get attachments, I struggle to open them, and half the time I feel like most of the data is missing. I would love to have stuff sent to me where everything's right there in front of me, just like this. So flipping back to the presentation, another really nice thing, and this kind of comes back to that single version of truth that I like a lot, is you can also take your Webby tables and you can embed them into a Tableau dashboard. And the reason we do this here is because we're making that Tableau dashboard from that trusted data source from our Webby, but we also might want that table showing at the same time. So to do this, we're going to use what's called the Open Doc link, and I'll show you how to get that in a minute. And you can also use your Tableau dashboard to filter that Webby report, which I'm going to do. And then also, initially you may need to enter your Web Intelligence username and password, but there is a way to encrypt that as well. And we actually have it encrypted on our end. We created a custom script. So pretty cool things that you can do with it.
Hey, Heather.
So the first thing that, yes, hi,
Before you move on to that one, we had a few questions come in. The first question asks, where does the data reside? In Tableau Workbook? And if so, how does it get refreshed?
Where does the data reside in Tableau Workbook? So yes, the data resides as a hyper for this particular one in Tableau Workbook. So I have this revenue dashboard that I created before, and if I go to any of my tabs here, you'll see the data source is this hyper called data source. And if I flip back over here, here it is right here. It's a live data source. The way that it got there was the first workflow I showed, where I took that Webby report and I pushed the Webby report as a hyper to Tableau server. And so if I want to refresh that, that would just be a schedule. So I have this burst to hyper. Let's say I want this to be refreshed regularly. I could make a schedule, refresh hyper. I can add that burst to it. And again, when I came in maybe Monday through Friday at 6 a.m., I want that data to be fresh. And I can even add events. I could come in here and I can say, okay, well, I want to make sure that my ETL has run. I can add that event, and what it'll do is at 6 a.m. it'll kick off and it'll wait for this event to occur. and then it'll refresh that data. So that would be my full workflow.
Great. And then the next question is asking, if we create a Tableau dashboard on top of using business objects, do we need to keep scheduled BO report daily, or Tableau will take care from Tableau side?
So that would actually be handled through InfoBurst. So, you know, if you create this using the workflow that I just showed, InfoBurst would be your scheduling tool. So you would have that InfoBurst would grab the hyperfile, refresh it out to your Tableau server, and then, you know, even if you want to deliver your Tableau content somewhere else, which I'm going to show in a minute, again, InfoBurst can handle that piece for you as well. So, you know, InfoBurst can refresh a hyper extract for you on the Tableau server as well. So it's a pretty powerful tool.
Awesome. And last question, if we remove the BO report or BO environment, what will happen to the Tableau report?
Well, it is based off of it. So, you know, you are going to need that BO environment for this particular workflow to work. We do offer the ability to create hyperfiles directly from, say, let me go back to my other folder, a database query. So, you know, I have these different connections. We have this, say, customer product query here. And if we have time at the end, I can kind of show that, but I can take the results of this query and push those out as a hyper too, and just basically bypass business objects if I needed to. So, you know, we do offer workflows for non-business object users or for people who are trying to move away from it. And that's something that we've actually helped a lot of customers with.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so jump back over here for a second, just, you know, kind of reiterate. Again, you know, we're going to use the open document link and show you first where to get that. So let's go back to Webby. And if I go to my documents, really all I have to do is right click here and I say document link. And this is what's called your open document link. And you can see it says copy and paste link to share document. Obviously, the person who's trying to open the document has to have access to it. So it's not necessarily, you know, if you're on a public domain, then they might be able to access it outside of your company. But that's kind of my one caveat. So I took that link and I pasted it into Notepad for now, just so that you can see it. So here's that original link from BO. The first thing I did was I replaced a piece of it right here, this custom, with a custom script that we've created internally to remove the need to log into business objects through Tableau. So you'll see what I mean when we do that. It just automatically refreshes and it has an embedded my username and password. And then finally, this report had that optional prompt called customer state. So this last piece at the end, this and LSM part, I don't know how to just highlight that piece, honestly, is basically the call to feed a prompt within a Webby report through this open document link. So right now I have it hard-coded, as you can see, to Nevada. I'm going to grab this link and just copy it for now, and I'm going to jump over to Tableau Desktop for a minute, and we're going to connect out. So I pushed the same hyper data source Webby just to my local drive, just for, you know, simplicity's sake. I'm going to open that up and go to a worksheet. And I can start building, and this is my Webby data. You can see it has all the same stuff that we saw before on Tableau Server, and I could have even pulled it down from Tableau Server just as easily and use that, but it's the Webby data source again. Oops, I don't want to see. I like the undo button. Here we go. So I want to add the state, first of all. So here's my map of the US, and all the different states that have data are showing, but it's a little hard to read right now. So we're going to build this out a tiny bit. Maybe I want the revenue to show by color. Great, but now I can't really read the name of the state, so I can take the states and add a label for the state name. And then also maybe I want to see that revenue on there as well. This is looking pretty good. I don't really care about the title at the moment. I'm going to take that out. So now I have the map of the United States showing the different revenue by state. Come over to my dashboard and drop that in. I don't really care about this little revenue box up here, so let's get some real estate by moving that out of the way. And, all right. Next thing is we want to bring in our Webby report. So to do that and start building it, we have to drag in an object called web page. I'm going to bring that in and see it's going to ask me for that URL. And this is why I already copied that open document link. I'm going to paste that in and hit OK. And you'll see it's refreshing and it's connecting, and it's going to run that Webby report, and it's going to bring it back here for me. So it's going to start opening the document and processing. It opens right up to the summary tab and refreshes. And as I said before, I hard-coded it to Nevada. And you can see that it's showing the Nevada table on the summary tab at the bottom of the page. So how do we fix that? How can we make it so that if I come up here and say select Colorado, this refreshes and shows Colorado? Pretty simple. That would be an action item. So I'm going to add an action to my dashboard, and I'm going to say go to a URL. And I want this to happen on, dashboard sheet 1 when I select something. And where do I want it to go? Same URL as before. However, this time, instead of going to Nevada, I'm going to use this arrow here, and I'm going to add that customer state from my first dashboard, because that's one of the options, as what I'm feeding into this URL. I click OK and OK. Now when I come up here and I select Colorado, the table at the bottom is going to refresh as well. And there it is. And what's really cool is, I said before, I highlighted this last revenue number for a reason, and that's because you can now see that the revenue at the top, 46,002, matches the revenue at the bottom, 46,002. So there's that single version of truth. And this will work for, any state that I click on at this point. It's going to refresh and it's going to reload this report. And here we go again, 2662, 2662. So pretty cool little shortcut for, anyone that's working with Tableau and Levy together. This is one thing that you can do to kind of take advantage of both products at once. So finally, kind of jumping back to InfoBurst, one other thing that we have the ability to do is to take a Tableau workbook and a BusinessObjects report and split them apart and combine them back together to create dynamic content. So again, some of the prerequisites are the same. You have to be a Tableau workbook on Tableau server, but then we can filter on any dimension in either of those, either Tableau or Webby. And we can also choose our views, our dashboards, our report tabs, and we can combine them back together by any of the following, right? So anything that is part of the burst, any common variable, or if we're sending them out by email, even by email recipient. So that workflow, jumping back over to InfoBurst, requires just a couple of things ahead of time as well. So one of those is a template, and this is just I created this just to tell it where to basically deliver the files to and in what format. You can see I set my destination ahead of time as my network folder. I chose which folder to deliver to, and then you see I have that file name in here as well, and I can still use those macros if I know I'm going to filter my data, which is really cool. So I know that macro is percentage state abbreviation. I can leverage that in this template because I know I'm going to filter the data using that same database connection that I used before. You can also still do the replace, email notification. All this stuff is available at template level as well as format. So I can, I've set this so that it's going to be a PDF when I deliver it. And one really cool thing with templates too, I like to mention here is they're not just for combining data. So let's say you have a burst that has 10 different documents in it and they're all going to the same place. Rather than adding 10 separate deliveries, you do have the ability to apply this template simultaneously to all of the documents in one burst. So just a little time saving tip for all the InfoBurst users out there that sit there and add delivery, add delivery, add delivery. You can make one template for, the same delivery and apply it to all your documents at once. So starting a new burst, we're just going to say combine Webby and tab, just this quick. And now I'm going to add the items to my query. So, the small caveat I have here that I like to say is the order you click on the items is the order they're going to be in the burst, and it's the order they're going to be in your document when you're done. But I am actually going to add them in the order I don't want, just so I can kind of show you that piece as well. So if I check the two, the Webby report as well as the dashboard from Tableau, oh no, I didn't want them in that order. I want my dashboard first, followed by my Webby document. We have this little manage button here, and this lets you do a lot of different things. So, first and foremost, you can enable and disable documents here, but I can also reorder them. So let's say I wanted that revenue dashboard first. I just click the arrow and move it. And then finally, here's what I was talking about with that template. So I can say select all and choose a template and apply it here if I wanted to, for this particular distribution. I actually just came here to reorder, but I like to show that as well. But now they're in the order that I want them. I'm going to filter the document. And I've had this question before, do we have to filter each one separately? And the answer is yes, and that is intentional, because what if you don't want them both filtered? What if one of them is, say, a summary document where you want all the data, and one of them is one that you want filtered? You have the ability to choose which document or documents you're applying filters to. I'm going to add that state name column. Done, that one's filtered. And then the same for the Webby document. So I can come in here and, you can see I'm just selecting customer state, clicking add, and I'm adding that data source, that database connection again, and my state query state name. Let's click OK. And This little blue dot means something's not saved, hit the save button. So I like to make sure I'm hitting it frequently just to make sure. So now I have my 2 documents and I have them filtered. I don't want to add a delivery here, and that's also why I didn't apply that template. I want to tell InfoBurst to group these documents back together as a PDF. So I'm going to come over here to PDF grouping, and like I said, you could do it by verse, variable, or email recipient. And we also have Excel grouping as well, which is very similar, just it comes out as Excel instead of as a PDF. I'm just going to say, okay, what template? So I'm going to pick the one that I showed a minute ago. And then what variable do I want to group on? Well, I broke it on customer's date. I should group it back together on that. So I add that. And then I do also have the ability to create an auto-generated table of contents. Personally, when I am sending a Tableau dashboard, I like that to be my first page so that when you open it, you're like, wow, look at this. This is really cool. So I'm going to hide the table of contents for this particular example. Click Save. And then there's one more piece that I like to jump back to. And that is, now that I've done that, on the Items tab, I have this new option here that says Format. If I click on that, it's going to tell you, okay, it's already set to a PDF, nothing to worry about. But this is where it gets really cool. I can come in here and I can say, wait, I don't want all these different views to go out. I just want my main dashboard. So I can come in and uncheck and just select that dashboard. So I'm basically splitting up this document, you know, same for the Webby. If I were only certain tabs I want to include, for example, in this one, maybe I just want the summary tab, I can split and recombine those tabs into one document. And that's it. I hit the run button and everything kind of generates and spits out. And again, I do this ahead of time so we don't have to sit and watch a burst run. And you get these 4 cool PDF documents. So if I open one, let's say Nevada. And here we go. So the first page, again, is that Tableau dashboard that I showed you earlier, but you can see that it's filtered for Nevada. Here's Las Vegas, which is definitely in Nevada. And then on the second page is the Webby report, also filtered for just Nevada. So I dynamically created that content. And it does still create the bookmarks as well. And this is basically what the table of contents would look like on the first page if I had included it. So you can jump from page to page also using the bookmarks on the left side. So that is our content grouping ability. And, you know, I can open another one as well, maybe Florida. Here is the, you know, dashboard for Florida. And then, of course, the data table is going to be huge because there's a ton of data for Florida, but you kind of get the idea. Oh, and I had a neat little graphic that I forgot to show for how they combine. But yeah, you kind of got the idea already. We did it live. So even better than the graphic. And that is it for today. I think I'm nearing my time and trying to keep it short too. I don't want to fall behind again. So any questions or anything I can answer or anything, you know, that I mentioned that you want to see?
Thank you, Heather. Yes, we had a question come in. If you have row level restriction in Webby report, after extracting the file to Tableau, it will lose the restriction, correct?
Row level restriction. Are we referring to by like the user, you know, so user security? Is that what we're discussing?
It says yes.
Sorry, okay. So we actually, when we do these distributions, one of the really cool things is if I click on my username up here and password, I'm not going to show you my passwords, you can see them. I actually have my platform credentials embedded in InfoBurst. So if I'm running the burst, I can only access what I can access in BusinessObjects. It pulls that security through into InfoBurst and leverages both your BusinessObjects security as well as your Tableau server security. So now you would have the same data access that you have in Web Intelligence through this process. It's not going to pull down the entire data set, only what you